guys. I'm so happy to be back with you for another episode of Evolve. I am your host, Monette Brann-Natta. I am just back from a whirlwind trip through the South, a place that I spent a lot of my time in my 20s, the Carolinas, and I visited with friends who feel like family, and I had a wonderful time, a really, really wonderful time. I'll get around to posting some pictures about that soon. But today, I wanted to talk about what it means to be psychic. Really, that will be the name of the show, the truth about psychics, intuitives, and empaths. And it's not as salacious as it may sound. Maybe it might be insightful. I was thinking about the word psychic as I was going through my travels and doing work with some of the people that I was traveling and seeing and visiting, one of whom is actually a client that turned into a friend, that turned into family, and that has been a great joy in my life. But the word psychic is a loaded notion, I realized. Throughout the years, I've had people question, what is it exactly that you do? They're very curious about what I do, my gifts. It's hard to conceptualize, especially if you've known me in a former incarnation. And by former incarnation, I mean, if you knew me before, you know me now. As we're always evolving. No coincidence that that's the title of the show. I really believe that. I really believe we're always taking our paces to become new and better people, but also learning about truths. Sometimes we get puzzle pieces given to us, and things fit into place. And today, I'm going to share a little piece of a puzzle that I am putting together in my life, and it's fascinating how things come to you. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I have a friend, a colleague in the metaphysical community, actually a colleague that has a show here on the Talk Network studios. And she says she hates the word psychic, and we were laughing about that one day. She said, I don't like that word. Now, this colleague is incredibly intuitive. She is a Pisces. She is fantastic at reading and understanding people, and she does readings and astrology and a myriad of other things, but she doesn't like the word psychic. And I thought about that because I've called myself that before. People have called me that before. What I really consider myself to be is an intuitive and an empath. That is really what I would consider it. Do I have flashes of things that psychics would? Certainly. And have I seen things happen and then they come to fruition? Absolutely. But what I'm really adept at is feeling. I feel would be the way that I would describe the work that I do. So when I say that I'm clairsentient, that's truly what I mean. I am feeling, and I'm clairaudient. I am hearing, sometimes, very often, things, conversations, and we've talked about that. But I want to get back to this word, psychic, and it being loaded, and the people that I surround myself with that would say, I would never call myself as such. And I wondered about that, and I wondered about what is attached to that word and the traits of people that perform these amazing gifts. Are we any more special? Are we less special? Are we just like everybody else? I want to debunk that for you today. We are just like everybody else. We might be more highly sensitive, but everybody has an intuition. And we've talked about that here on Evolve. Everybody has the ability to tap in and know something is wrong. If you watch any of those 48 Hours or any of those shows, Dateline, you always hear people saying, I kind of knew something was off the moment X, Y, and Z happened. Or if a mother is missing their child, she'll say, I had a feeling he was still alive, but I just didn't know how to get to him. Or I had a feeling something was wrong. We are living in our feelings. And in Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, he talks a lot about how we make instantaneous decisions about people when we meet them. We are very animalistic in that way. We are using what Joe Rogan would call the lizard brain. We're using that part of our brain to assess people at all times and assess situations, whether they are safe for us, whether they are dangerous, whether we should proceed with caution or proceed with reckless abandon. We are feeling people. I also believe, and this is something I've shared with you, that I believe we choose to come through our parents. We choose our parents, we choose our lessons, we choose the feelings that our parents are having to absorb that as we're coming through to create the life that we are supposed to live and to fulfill our destiny. We're always learning lessons from all of the relationships that we have at all times, and a lot of those lessons are based in feelings. Recently, a sister sent me a picture of myself as a child holding up a stethoscope to my father's chest, and I was curious about the picture because I vaguely remembered it. I looked to be 4 years old, maybe 5 in the picture, and so I was curious, and I was holding this up to his chest, and I could tell in the picture that I was curious about him. One eyebrow was raised quizzically as I was listening carefully to his heartbeat. And upon asking my mother about this photo, she reminded me about a time in my life. And she said, listen, at that time, we were walking through the Aventura Mall in Florida, the 3 of us, and I was sandwiched in between both of them. She said, your little hands were in each of theirs. And so I was holding their hands and swinging as kids do, and my mother said that I looked up at my father and I said, Daddy, are you crazy? And he chuckled and said, no. And I looked up at my mother and I said, well, Mommy, are you crazy? And she said, no, I'm not crazy. And I said, well, if Daddy's not crazy and you're not crazy, then I must be crazy. I was 4. And at that age, I was already operating in my calling. At that time, my mother and father were in the process of a divorce, and I was recently back stateside after being sent to live in Antigua with relatives while they figured out the logistics. My mother and I surmised recently when we were talking about this picture that I was merely trying to figure out the chaos that was my life. She said that I lovingly reassured them that everything would be okay, and that I patted their hands, broke free, and skipped away, running into a toy store that was straight ahead of us. And I went directly to the doctor kit. She said I stood there, and I told them I needed this to make them better. So they bought it for me. And then the picture happened shortly thereafter. And if I can figure out how to post a picture not sideways, the way that my sister, we're both not very computer literate, sent it to me, I'll post that picture with the upload of today's show so that you can see that one eyebrow raised as I'm looking at my father trying to figure out, well, who's crazy here? Let's fix the problem. That was fascinating to me, and that's what I was talking about at the top of the show, about a puzzle piece. You go through your whole life. You think you know what you're supposed to be doing. You try on different suits. You try on different hats. You try out different careers. And what you always have been is right there. Now, when I was teaching preschoolers, one of the things I learned in all of that continuing education is that you are essentially who you are at 3 to 4 years old. Your personality is pretty set in stone. You can add and develop and take away and be taught new things, but the core of who you are is set. And in that picture at 4, with me looking into my father's eyes, wondering about his sanity, I was who I am, a healer. I was who I am, an empath and an intuitive. And I was feeling that emotional kind of milieu that my parents were going through and not understanding where I fit and wanting to make it better. Now, I would not be the first child to think that they could fix their parents' problems or that they might even be the cause of their parents' problems. Now, I don't remember thinking that I was the cause. I certainly thought that I could fix it. But that piece of the puzzle was fascinating. I appreciate my father because he has ways of resurfacing. He has passed in this manner. Pictures sent to me from people I don't know or half-sisters I'm not very familiar with that just are like, hey, is this you? And it's really interesting. I know it's not a coincidence. I know that we are communicated with, and we've talked about that on previous shows, from loved ones that have passed. But at this time in my life, as I've been questioning new moves in my career and wondering about things and where they may be going, my father showed up to remind me, you've always known where it was going. You've always been doing what you are supposed to be doing. Now, it feels really good now as an adult to say that, but this is what the show is about today. This is a private secret that empaths and intuitives don't share, that there's a lot more that goes on. It's not all glamorous and magical. when you're figuring out that you're an intuitive and a healer and you're helping people. It may sound that way, but like any education, there are tests to study for. There are tests you fail. There are moments when you don't think you're going to make it. There are moments when you want to quit and you're not happy. There are moments when you don't want to do the work. Doing the work takes energy. And when you're an empath, you're often immersed in giving out energy, taking in energy. So you think, where am I going to find the energy to knuckle down, to study, and to do the work? But still, I press forward. So what I want you to understand about that picture and then that moment in my life is that I was intuiting my parents' pain, and I was trying to diagnose and come up with a solution for the pain. What I was doing then is no different than what I do now. It is not different than what any empath, intuitive, or psychic healer does. We avail ourselves for the greater good. But I want to pull back on that because that sounds really lofty, doesn't it? We avail ourselves for the greater good. There's a few pitfalls in even that frame of mind, things that I've learned over the years, and that's what I want to share with you. While we're availing ourselves for the greater good, I want to get a little bit into the nitty and the gritty of that, because it is not, like I just said, all sunshine and lollipops. As empaths, we're really adept at getting into the savior side of the hero's journey, or the victim side. This is a place, I'll call it the sunken place, where I definitely was in for a great part of my 20s. Now, there's a very good reason for this, and it is a learning opportunity for growth. One of the things that empaths, and this is the scoop, guys, don't usually share with those outside of our community, is the likelihood that we have attracted our fair share of energy vampires, narcissists, or sociopaths. Sociopaths, that's a scary word, but it's very, very true. This is a fact that becomes our personal shame and embarrassment, especially juxtaposed against the law of attraction theory that like attracts like. I really struggled with this until I heard a brilliant talk by Dr. Christine Northrup, who has been on Oprah and in Hay House and a myriad of other things. But she was doing a talk in the last couple months that I heard that blew me away. And she really explained the phenomena of energy vampires and said that we are not attracting because we are alike, which was what I feared. I thought, how could I have so many similar experiences with crazy people? Are you crazy or am I crazy? That's a question I guess I've been asking since I was a child. And I wondered, how did this happen? Why, if I'm not like these people, how am I attracting people like them? And what she explained is that we are attracting because we are the medicine. And a sick person goes to the doctor, and a person that isn't well and wants to know what love is, as sociopaths don't really know what that is, wants to tap into the energy, to mirror it, to mimic it, to experience it. Now, Teal Swan, who is another person in the metaphysical community, you can find her on YouTube, her theory is that empaths are a perfect breeding ground for the narcissist behavior or the sociopath's behavior because she believes that we are existing. She is an empath herself, so she believes that empaths are existing on different sides of the same scale. That was hard for me. I thought, oh my gosh. So then we're back to the like attracts like. That means that I must be like this if I'm existing on different sides of the same scale. Now, she does a much more in-depth explanation than I'll have the time to do today, but pretty much her idea is that without you feeding into the energy of that sociopath or narcissist, you aren't feeling needed. So in your own way, there is this kind of well or vacuum that needs to be filled in you. You have to, and there we go back to that hero's journey of the victim, savior, or the aggressor. You know, you're going always on this loop in life until you figure out how to step outside of that. So I had to get real